Hey, Raising America family, we have a huge guest for you today. It's Jillian Michaels. She's on deck. And of course, you remember her from The Biggest Loser. If you haven't noticed, she's been dipping her toe in politics. So we asked her why. We also asked her, as a parent of two, what keeps her up at night. Here she is. Okay, Jillian, I'm so grateful that you're joining us. So grateful. So you're the first person I thought of for a myriad of reasons. And I have 3 kids myself. You're also a parent. But when I saw this article where we're looking at kids really who are more obese than not, they're outnumbering kids who are a healthy weight. I kind of thought to myself, holy shit, these kids are at a huge disadvantage. I mean, like that would be an understatement,
Yeah. Okay, well, I looked at that article you sent me, and here's something interesting. I don't know if you caught it. It said that the number of kids globally that are obese is greater than the number of kids globally that are underweight, meaning famine across the world is now declining, but obesity amongst these kids in the developing world is growing. And it reminds me of a book I read many years ago by Robert Rodale, who wrote this book called Save 3 Lives. And it was about ending poverty and famine across the globe, across the developing world. And here's something interesting that I wanted to read to you, a little summary on that book, and see if it pings anything for you. Robert Rodale argued that Western solutions to global hunger, like shipping food aid or exporting industrial farming models, often do more harm than good. Instead of building self-sufficiency, they create dependence on imported seeds, fertilizers, and processed foods while destroying soil, displacing local farmers, and eroding traditional diets. Programs presented as humanitarian aid frequently serve corporate interests, locking poor nations into the same extractive food systems that produced America's obesity and chronic disease crisis. Now, I mean, I don't know if you remember 6 months ago when everybody was up in arms about USAID and not sending food overseas. And Rodale had been talking for literally decades about how funny that people in Africa and these parts of the world were sending food, they survived for thousands of years without us.
Right.
And now you just sent me this article and it's like, interesting. These kids aren't underweight, they are now overweight. So you didn't solve any sort of a problem, you created a new one. And that's really the work of big food and big ag.
Well, and it's almost like now we started by complaining about lobbyists. Like we look at kids' lunches, we did an episode on it. There's like no restriction on added sugar. Like these kids are just taking down sugar. My kids were like, "Oh, you should taste the strawberry milk," and I'm like, "What? You can't drink regular milk. You can't drink regular milk." So now are we? So what's the culprit? Like, are we now lobbying across the world? And also, is farming too complicated? Is bureaucracy all over? Is it out of control?
Well, you don't need to lobby around the world. All you have to do is lobby here, even though they are. For example, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but to give you an example, they push the hepatitis B vaccine globally through the World Health Organization.
Right.
So, and again, okay, you could test the mom for hepatitis B before you vaccinate a newborn, and newborns aren't engaging in risky unprotected sex and intravenous needles. So there's other ways of protecting kids from hepatitis B, but all they have to do is lobby the politicians here, and billions of tax dollars, American tax dollars, go towards sending their product overseas to the developing world, whether it's their chemicals or their seeds, so on and so forth. So it's happening here, but the standard American diet is spreading. You're starting to see it. I mean, travel anywhere. You could be in sub-Saharan Africa, and I swear to God, when you land at that airport, you're going to see a KFC. I can't. I'm like,
Chick-fil-A will be closed on Sundays. Don't worry. You won't have access on Sundays. You made a really funny comment when you're like, "I'm not an anti-vaxxer," and I hear that from moms and parents literally every day. They're like, "I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but at the same time, holy I just need more information." It's almost as if you have to go from one category to the other. If you question it, you're automatically an anti-vaxxer when you're
Right.
like, "Well, but why are there 17 vaccines scheduled when I took 7? Why are you pushing HPV on my daughter when she's 10? I'm pretty sure she's not putting out." I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think she's really interested. Like we read like fun books and stuff. We don't. I
Right.
don't
Not there
understand.
yet? She's not there yet. Mm.
No, no
Yeah, no, that's what should be so alarming, is not the question, but rather the
reaction.
immediate, fiery response maligning those who ask the questions. For years, to be dead honest with you, there were many crunchy granola people in my life, and I was like, "Oh my god, stop, stop! Oh my god, these save lives." And I believe that many do. I think the numbers are there. That's not the point. The question now is, okay, hold on a second. I was not aware that the overwhelming majority of the vaccines on the CDC's schedule for kids don't actually have a pre-licensing longitudinal safety study against an inert placebo. I didn't know this, of course, until I started asking questions of doctors and experts who were saying this. I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Where there's smoke, there's fire. What's
Yeah.
happening here? Or why a newborn would suddenly need a hepatitis B vaccine when we can test mom? Or why the schedule became so much more aggressive after the pharmaceutical companies got blanket immunity in 1986. Like, these are normal questions for a parent to ask, and the fact that you are instantly maligned as completely insane and anti-science should really be where the concern goes.
Do you think it's that when we're in the hospital, we feel a vulnerability, maybe because I don't have an MD behind my name, and I didn't go to medical school, and I did okay in biology, but you automatically know better than me. Is that why? I mean, that's the position that I was in. Well, yeah, of course, my son, my daughter needs this. I don't know.
I think that goes without saying. For
Mm.
example, I never thought that fluoride was the hill to die on until I was forced to learn about it.
Right.
And then I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. You're telling me the in our water is coming from hazardous waste? You're
Yep.
telling me it's getting scraped from a smokestack, not pharmaceutical grade. They'd have to dispose of it as hazardous waste. Instead, they're selling it to municipalities to fluoridate the water, and then we're getting too much fluoride as a result. And then the benefits to teeth is about topical application, not ingestion. And then there's health ramifications like lowered IQ for kids and thyroid stuff and all kinds of it. Wait a second." And then ironically, I got in this fight with a friend of mine who's an interior designer with thyroid issues. And I was like, "Hey, do you filter your water? I wonder if this could be contributing to the problem with your thyroid." My brother's a dentist, and he says you guys are all crazy.
Well,
And the
we are
thing is,
crazy. We are crazy. We already knew that.
I'm like, "But mama, just how about, can you watch some of these videos and just do your own research on it?" And no, because my brother's a dentist, and that's what he was trained, how he was trained. And I said, "Do me a favor, ask him the following questions." And I gave other populations that haven't fluoridated the water, that have better oral health. I asked questions about, topical application of fluoride versus ingestion of fluoride, the robust data on it lowering kids' IQ. And I never got an answer because she never looked and she never asked, because it's all so tribal.
Well, we go into our corners, and then we feel safe, and then we feel reinforced. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we started this, is just to have the conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're all crazy. We're all on the spectrum. It's where you land on it, and if you're willing to listen to the other side of the crazy. You know,
Yes.
I love listening when you inject yourself in political conversation. I want to know when you made the shift, because you had it all, right? You were the queen of the fitness industry. You
Yeah.
had the fame, you have the family. So, listen, I've been covering politics for 2 decades, and you know what you're getting into. You can't win.
No, you can't win, which is so heartbreaking.
So what motivates you is to break down those barriers, because Well, I've listened to some of your interviews, and I want
Yeah.
to say maybe it was Joe Rogan when you went into the deep psychological motivations when you're working with people who are severely obese, and you
Yeah.
went into a long conversation with him. So I'm thinking to myself, did you learn sort of mental combat in all those years with all those clients? And are you applying that now when you're saying, listen, this is my side and this is why?
No.
No.
So the understanding of what drives a person to become obese has to do with my own journey as an overweight kid, having a mother who is a psychoanalyst, being in therapy, and really understanding what's underneath it. Um, and what that does, hopefully, is, uh mitigate some of the shame that people feel around their struggle with food and obesity, silence some of the critics in a way that's healthy, because now, you're asking them to believe that being overweight is healthy and beautiful, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but their response, they're puking that back up and in ways that are unnecessarily critical, so it's trying to breed understanding on all sides so that we can properly get to the bottom of that issue and help people heal. So that's a bit of a separate beast. Um, the political piece has really come out of concern as a global citizen and as a parent. uh, the rise of political violence, the othering of people who don't agree with you, and the dehumanization, the hideous things that come out of that. I think that racism, I'm sorry, is on the rise, and I think it's not because of Trump. Actually, I think it's because kids are choking on woke culture and the narrative that they're inherently bad for the color of their skin. It's not about putting white people's feelings at the center of a conversation. It's about the fact that you are going to breed the next generation of racists with this narrative. And that's actually what's scary. We need to stop using this to rally a base and start looking at what it's doing to our kids. I have a white son, I have a black daughter.
Mhm.
Right now, she's celebrated at her school. People love her. She's like a rock star, and that's great. But I'm also starting to see high schools in the middle of the country rename themselves Robert E. Lee. And I'm like, that's not good. Not happy about that.
Right.
Don't like that at all. And I have a son who's white. And, when people tell him, you guys are the problem, and he hears that narrative a lot. Obviously, kids are super switched on. They're watching politics on YouTube.
Yeah, they are.
I promise you. Why do you think Charlie Kirk was so beloved? Not because he's a bad guy. I'm saying because he was able to reach kids. They're finding them on things like TikTok and YouTube. So when they're exposed to that messaging and you tell them they're all bad, they will become tribal. That's the kind of stuff that alarms me. That's the like stuff with our kids' food, stuff in the culture that could harm them. These culture wars are creating a really toxic environment, not just for us, but in particular for our kids. And I had thought foolishly that I could bridge ideologies as a former lefty. I thought I could say to the left, like, it's not that they're not actually evil. They think when they go in the streets and they go after ICE, they're misled. They think ICE is the Gestapo because Newsom told them that.
Yeah.
And Pritzker told them that. Like, we have to show them the opposite. Don't hate these people. They're confused. Show them the opposite. Then you go over to the left and it's like, hey, hold on a second. This is what I appreciate that you have empathy for people who are trying to migrate here and have a better life, but this is federal law
Right.
that was enacted by Congress, enforced by these guys. If you want to change it, vote differently. Like, I thought I could sort of speak truth to power, and I thought I could bridge ideologies because I didn't actually judge either side, and I actually understood either side. But you know what ended up happening? The right was willing to have any and every conversation, and the left immediately said, you're MAGA, you're alt-right, you're a racist, you're an anti-vaxxer, and I'm trying to think. I mean, pick any other pejorative you can come up with, ableist, fat shamer, and they shut down the conversation. That's it.
Well, I disagree because I think you have strength coming from a position. You have a vulnerability that I've witnessed, but You made an interesting comment. If you never became a parent, would you have abstained from
Yeah.
entering this realm?
Oh,
Like, you're in
hell
the
yeah.
ring now. You're in it, whether you like it or not.
Hell yes, I would have abstained. Absolutely. There's no reason. I would have absolutely stayed out of it. But the
But you can get
unfortunately.
away with saying that other people can't. I think you can. I think you
Really?
can. I do, because I don't have I mean, well, you first of all, you have the platform, right? And then you're saying I came from a place where I used to believe in something else. I've interviewed going back to vaccines, I've interviewed a doctor who gave vaccines for almost 30 years, and she said I stopped giving them. So I trust her more than I mean, I've already vaccinated all my kids and it's fine.
I
Like,
do. They're vaccinated.
they're all
100%.
vaccinated.
Yeah. I mean, I think, part of my concern is that I'm also seeing big pharma and big food control the narrative in ways that are instigating culture wars. So I'll give you an example. When you see all of this body positivity, this is a big food psyop. And if you think I'm crazy, maybe you'll believe the Washington Post because they wrote a whole article, a piece, an expose on the ways in which the big food companies are paying registered dietitians and influencers to spread this message of like there's no such thing as junk food, and if you say so you're racist and you're ableist, and big is beautiful, and as mentioned, big is in the eye of the beholder, but it isn't healthy unquestionably. And anybody who questions this narrative is a fat shamer, and gets labeled with all these hideous pejoratives again. And then simultaneously, if you look at gender affirming care, I mean, what an incredible name, gender affirming care, which basically means we are going to sterilize your kids permanently before they are truly capable of comprehending the ramifications of that decision. They will have permanent sexual dysfunction. It's possible they could regret it, but there's no way to know because they're so young. Again, they can't fully comprehend that maybe there's something else going on.
Mhm.
Maybe they're depressed. Maybe there's links to all kinds, like autism, for example. There's a host of other things that could be going on with these kids, and it could be a phase. With that said, the ramifications of gender affirming care are devastating in some cases. And not only that, last but not least, these drugs have serious side effects. They impact brain development, bone development. So, wanting to discuss that and saying, are we really honestly taking a hard look at what this can cost our kids and what the data actually says? You're a transphobe and a bigot and this and that, the other. But who put that narrative out there? That's a big pharma narrative. 100%. I could give you a million different examples as to how, because it is a multi-billion-dollar business and growing.
So the thing, and I have a young daughter, that the movement, as I read more and more about it, is also, when did it become this community where schools and counselors and to
Yep.
me, it's almost, I mean, I'm flummoxed. I'm actually almost speechless. And why aren't we handling whatever your child is going through as a family unit? Maybe my daughter has all these questions, and I would say, I'm going to be with you the whole whatever journey we go on. But you were born with this biological setup, so we're going to go through this phase of your life together. You're not even a consenting adult. You can't drive a car, you can't buy alcohol, you can't vote. In fact, you can barely wipe your own tush. But 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 and I'm not going to put you under the knife. So for a parent, I'm actually, can you help me understand? I'm speechless. What we're
Why
witnessing.
why everybody's quote gotten on board on the left is the big question. Is that, well, okay, so let me give you one example. Okay. So there's something called, I think it's called an HEI score, Health Equity Index. Hold on 2 seconds. I want to make sure I get this right for you because it's been a minute since I talked about it. And if you can find it on the HRC's website, the Human Rights Campaign, is it Health Equity Index Score? So hang on, let me pull this up for you. Long story short, yeah, the HEI score. Okay. So listen to this. It's a numerical measure used to assess how fairly health outcomes and resources are distributed against different populations, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this, if you go to the HRC's website, it has to do with gender affirming care and how they treat essentially people who want hormones and surgeries. If a doctor essentially pushes back or the medical institution pushes back, they get a bad score. And then it has to do with how much money they're given, right? So I'm butchering this to a certain extent, but I encourage everybody to look into it. So if you go to the HRC's page on HEI score, yep, pull that up. Hang on a second. HRC page HEI score. And if you look who funds it, it's going to say Pfizer. Okay.
Okay.
Here we go. Except, okay, health.
Okay, so it's my job though. Okay, I'm gonna. Okay,
Yep.
hold on. Let me push. It's also none of my. It's none of my
Yeah,
business.
ready?
But like here, okay. So here's where the devil's advocate. Yeah.
And at the very bottom, hold on, look who funds it. And they get penalized for a pushback. That is a fact. So you will get penalized if you push back on it. All of this happily funded by Pfizer. Yeah. I'm not going to give you an opinion on it. I'm just going to tell you what's happening and push back on me. Go for it.
Okay. So this is where my brain's at. It's none of my business. It's none of my business what you do with Sally. This is what she's going through. What happens in a home is none of my business. And then on the other side, if Sally is bulimic and she's vomiting and you say, you're right, you are fat, keep throwing up. So so my devil's advocate, and I'm arguing with myself. So on one hand, I want to say, no, Jillian, it's none of your business. My daughter feels she was born a male and I'm going to provide that for her. Okay. But then the other half of my brain is saying, well, then if my daughter says I can't eat, I'm fat, she becomes anorexic. If I support that narrative, she'll die.
My thing is to just give people the information and let them make their own decisions. The problem is they don't have all of the information. And I would say to a parent whose child is gender dysphoric, you should consult a therapist who can help you support your child in the best possible way in whatever they're going through, who can help get to the bottom of what's going on with your kid. If this is real for them, I would encourage you to allow them to make this decision as an adult. These would be the reasons. Check out the CAS review. So this was the most substantial systemic review done by one of the top pediatricians in the United Kingdom, Dr. Hilary Cass, right? I think it's like 400 pages, and she did a systemic review. Long story short, she essentially, let's put it this way, what's in the review makes all of Europe pull back from gender-affirming care. Except here in the States, we're an organization called the WPATH Files, which is like the World Professional Association on Transgender Health. Is like, no, she's wrong, and these are all the reasons she's wrong. Shortly after the CAS review gets released, Michael Schellenberger and Public did the WPATH Files expose, and it shows that these experts also are very concerned about gender-affirming care. I would say to a parent, look, check out the CAS review. Check out the WPATH Files first. Look at all of the data. Get your child some help. There are side effects to these medications. Educate yourself on them. You know, how best can you support your child through this time without permanent impairment to their bone development, brain development, so on and so forth? Can they make this decision when they're older? And then it's, well, but they have to go through puberty as a boy or as a girl, and they feel otherwise. If you decide, and this is, you know, I don't know how I would handle this as a parent. I've thought about it a lot. It's like if my son came home and said, call me Penelope, and I want to wear a dress, to be dead honest with you, even though supposedly it is a fast track to medical transitioning, I think I would probably let him play it out. I think it's a phase, and I would probably say, okay, you know what? I'll call you Penelope, as long as I know he's not getting permanently hurt. And if the therapist told me that's the best way forward, and I consulted numerous therapists on it, maybe I would do it. Or maybe if they said it's not the best thing for him, don't, right? I would consult an expert. But I'm not here to tell you how to make decisions for your family. I'm here to tell you that they're lying to you about gender affirming care. These are off label cancer drugs that will sterilize your kid. These things will cause sexual dysfunction forever. Okay. These are irreparable changes. And when the body goes through puberty, key developmental things are happening that you're going to interrupt, and there are ramifications to that. You need to know that, because when you go to UCLA and you go to Johns Hopkins and like, this is amazing, and now your child won't commit suicide. You're such a good, loving, accepting mom. Well, the average bear is going to go, this is what a loving parent does. That's the thing. I just want them to know all of the facts and to understand that your this hospital is getting pressured into that narrative by things like the Healthcare Equality Index score funded by Pfizer.
Well, and I agree with you where, I mean, we all love our kids. I think that, and that's one of the, on this journey that I've been on is I look around and I say, oh, you all are just obsessed with your kids as I am. And if my son wanted that, you're right. I can barely give them melatonin at night, right? I'm like, well, that might be an endocrine disruptor. And my son's like, well, I can't sleep. I'm like, I don't really know. And I'm trying to take away the red Gatorade and give them clear, which by the way, they all have dyes in them. And but we're taking away their red dye and added sugars, but we're taking a knife and putting them under. That's where I'm lost, because they're so little and fragile. One of my kids suffers from ADHD, and there's pressure to medicate. And I'm
Yep.
thinking to myself, can we just let her go through puberty? Because I can look at the data, and I asked her pediatrician. She's like, well, there's a little bit, but it's not really going to be big. It's not going to really impact her endocrine system. And I'm like, but what she eats at the dinner table does? And you're telling me if I give her a stimulant every day, it's not going to interrupt her endocrine system? Why can't we just let her get through arguably the hardest part of life before we give them adult choices? You can do surgery on my body all day long. No problem. In fact, I would love that if anyone's willing to do it. I can tell you exactly what I want.
Ah.
But it seems off the table for my 10-year-old. So when we face these difficult conversations as parents, what has been most surprising to you as you've raised 2 kids?
Okay. Surprising with regard to the culture, I would say the dogma, the ideology, and the tribalism is insane. The fact that people don't look a little bit deeper before making these incredibly serious decisions. And I get it. I truly do believe it's coming from a good place. And they hear it from one source that is credible, their doctor, right? And they're like, okay, well, this is the doctor, and that's it. You'd be good. This is the dentist. They say fluoride. That's it. But I would say it's okay to question authority, get multiple opinions, educate yourself. I get stunned when I see people who don't do that. As a parent, I think the things that surprise me the most, this is personal, this is not related to anything going on in the culture, is just the fact that the kids, it reminds me of Jack Nicholson and As Good as It Gets, when he says to Helen Hunt, you make me want to be a better person.
Yeah.
The kids definitely, all that stupid that I did my whole life with the defense mechanisms and like, you're not going to call me, I'm not going to call you. Are you not going to invite me? I'm not going to, all that, listen, even as an adult, you could fall prey to that, and you could not be the bigger person, and you could get your feelings hurt and act like a but with the kids, I constantly hear the voice in my head, like, you're the adult, you have to be the bigger person. You're the adult, you have to be the bigger person. Role model for them what it looks like to be the bigger person. And it pushes me out of my comfort zone and helps me become more humble, hopefully more wise, hopefully more vulnerable. And I don't know, I didn't see that prior to becoming a parent. And it's obviously, I'm exceptionally grateful, but it's something I didn't anticipate.
It makes you the best version of yourself, right? I think that's one of the reasons that we can all talk. So, and this is my last question, I pinky promise.
No,
I
I'm
can only say pinky promise because we have kids and it's socially acceptable. Um, is what keeps you up at night? Because you have the girl and you have the boy. And like you said, if one of them, whatever they go through, I feel like I can handle with them. If they want, if they're gay or they want to transition or whatever it is. But what are your biggest fears? And I'm probably steering you towards AI and social media and the future and the tribalism and just the dumpster fire that we are,
Mhm.
both of us are witnessing in real time because we are in this industry. So what are you most fearful as a parent? Because like you said, you wouldn't give a shit about any of this really if you were just, just maybe keeping with your old career.
I know. Okay. With AI, we talk a lot about this actually, and we game out how to use it and how to exploit it with regard to things that the kids enjoy. And what will still be saleable. Like what are you getting into real estate? You can actually own buildings still. Can you make money there? Or you love hospitality, you love people. Okay, you can own restaurants and own hotels and like what we talk about that stuff and I hope that they learn to utilize it as a tool to grow their business and think of it in that way instead of something that's going to limit their business. So it's not so much AI. Even though, that's a very legitimate concern, it's more so about will there be a country there for them? I mean it. Are we going to, and I know the left feels the exact same and the right feels the exact same for different reasons, but are these things going to bring us into a civil war? And I don't mean necessarily even violence, but it's just the hatred, the othering, the silencing, all of these things scare me. Is there going to be a country there for the kids? Both sides have raised the alarm about this side is wiping their butt with the Constitution. That's they're all doing it. All these guys are doing it. They're running rampant. They're selling out the American people. There's unquestionably a uniparty engaging in the globalist agenda. And that's what I like military industrial complex, big food, big pharma, big insurance, big ag. They all take money from these guys. So I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. While we're quibbling about stuff like gender affirming care for kids, they're all united, passing the bill, giving immunity to big ag for glyphosate. I'm serious. That's just happening right now. And we're like, wait, don't chop the boobs off of my teenager. Because it matters. It's like a fire in your house that you got to go put out, even though like you have a mold problem, but you can never actually get over there because they're so busy creating distractions with these culture wars. So while, they're sending us to war with each other and we're taking the bait on it, all this crazy is being passed by the uniparty. It is. I promise you. That's the real evil that we should be uniting to fight against. And that is the stuff that I worry about is what is the world going to look like for them in that way? Are they going to be safe? Is there going to be protections that we took for granted? Are they going to have that stuff? I don't know. I don't know what the world is going to look like, and that worries me.
But are you optimistic? Like sometimes when I go down that rabbit hole, I'm like, no, you're being dramatic. You're being dramatic.
Definitely not being dramatic. You are definitely not being dramatic. We are seeing it in other countries. You're not being dramatic. You speak to people, you speak to people in the UK and this is kind of a dangerous conversation because it gets into the Muslim conversation, which is a tough conversation because the vast majority of Muslims or vast majority of Muslims are amazing, loving, incredible, peaceful people. But the
It's the most
problem is,
peaceful religion. I mean, I think my dad's read the Quran 3 times. He said it's the most peaceful religion.
right. But yet, of course, with everything, there's going to be extremism and so on and so. And what does that beget? So now in the UK, you have rape gangs, and nobody was willing to address the rape gangs because if you did, you were a racist who was against men of what was it, Southeast Asian descent. I'm trying to remember you weren't even allowed to say where they came from. I think it was, forgive me, I think it was Pakistan because the culture was very different and they didn't assimilate properly. And this had gone on as a huge scandal for at least a decade, I think. Forgive me, I can't remember exactly. But what worries me is then the person that turns around and says, hey, this is a huge problem. It's like, well, now you're in jail. You put something up on your social media and the police are at your door. Like,
Yeah.
have you seen those videos? That's the stuff that I'm thinking
It keeps you up at night.
yeah. And it has nothing to do, please don't get me wrong, with thinking, I do not think Muslims are bad. I have nothing against Muslims. But the issue is that because people are going to give me that label, I would not call out like radical factions or extremism that has allowed a bunch of girls to be raped for a decade. And then if you call it out, then they show up at your door and put you in jail. Like it's that kind of stuff. I'm like,
Well, and
well,
I think it's like like you said, everybody wants to give people opportunities when you look at immigration. The issue is assimilating into different cultures. So
right,
if you move if I move to a different country, I may have different beliefs, a different way of living, and maybe I don't want to assimilate to that country. And so that where I think is just that huge disconnect, right? And I don't know how we bridge that for the next generation. So there are opportunities for people who need it, but
right.
then there are cultures who are able to maintain what their founding fathers believed in. I just don't know what that looks like for the next
We
generation.
have done it for the entire frickin' not the entire time, the entire 250 years, but we figured it out. It was one of our greatest strengths, being a melting pot. But I mean, go back and watch videos of Obama and Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. It's like you have to learn English. You have to prove that you can afford to be here, that you're going to pay more into the system than you can take. We have quotas so we don't overrun the infrastructure. Like all of this existed for a reason. And
There
listen,
was
it had a
also
lot of flaws.
bipartisanship, though. There was I remember I mean, I was getting into politics at that time,
Yeah.
and it was one of the reasons why I started covering politics is that I could believe I could be a young Republican or a young Democrat, and I could go to dinner, and it was jovial. It was a beautiful time to live in DC. I think about it all the time. I miss it, but it's not there
Mhm.
anymore.
No, it's not. That's the stuff that worries me is what is this infighting going to beget over time? And what's gonna erode our actual constitutional rights? That worries me.
Well, Jillian, I don't want to leave on a negative note, but I do want to say that I am so grateful that you joined us. And I suspect that we'll ask you again now that we have your information. We'll stalk you for all things parenting because, like you said, I'm not sure you would be in this whole political realm if it weren't for those two people at home who inspire you.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Jillian.
Have a good one.